think, hot rod went from what it was in 1961 or two to almost every single issue going through the late 60s and the 70s had a new car. Because those were the advertisers, you got to pay the bills.
Right.
So everything turned to muscle cars, and then muscle cars turned to the fuel crunch, and so all that stuff was going down. And it's a, because Tony Thacker.
We met Tony Thacker. Tony's awesome, by the way.
Oh, what
Tony's
a crack up.
Tony's acquired taste. But one of the things I like about Tony, and there are other guys like that. They see the industry from inside and outside,
right?
And you kind of look down the road and you think, okay, where's all this going to go? And especially when you see a lot of guys with profiles like that. But it might turn into something nobody ever thought of. So. Like we're putting a Bonneville car together.
Oh, right on.
And I actually think the numbers at Bonneville go up. If you imagine a time when nobody drives their car, what better way to have a great fun than get a 200-mile-an-hour license in a place that you can't hit anything? So I don't know. It's a crazy time, but yeah. So how did you guys get started?
That was
buy a bunch of microphones.
We just start off. We
karaoke bar.
We had these microphones
country.
And
found the microphones.
Karaoke night.
Karaoke night. Yeah, we just couldn't sing.
Karaoke night.
We get up there. We did a bunch of covers of just spoken word stuff. Nobody ever does that. Everybody goes for the staples. But no, we it's just a group of us together. Had fun talking to one another.
Oh, cool.
And Brad and I decided one time he had an idea for a TV show.
Yeah.
Which he's starting to work on, as you can see back on the screen.
All right.
And it kind of melded perfectly because I said, your vision for what you want to do is exactly what I want to do, but because I look like this, I figured it was better to stay audio only. And
you got kids, they make suggestions like that, don't listen to it.
It's much safer that way. And we had just decided it was a great mix if we combined the TV show idea and the podcast.
Yeah.
This way, we had something no one else in the world has. Everybody else in the world, you watch a TV show, you have a season, it ends. There's nothing. This was something that would really bridge the gap between episodes and seasons and really give somebody just constant feeding, a lot of content. And this kind of took off, became kind of a monster all its own, which has been really fun.
Yeah, because a lot of these, not to pick on, the constituency, but a lot of these guys walk around. I do the Hall of Fame images for the Grand National,
right?
And every year I add a couple more asterisks, which mean the person no longer here.
Right.
And like I came with a metal shaper guy by the name of Ed Scutchfield. So the metal shapers is only like maybe a dozen in the country that can really make a car, and the guy that is like the cornerstone of that used to work for Cal Metal, and there's no recollection of anybody ever interviewing Red or talking to him, and yet he did Breedlove's bodies. He did, the big Spirit of America car. He did the Manta Ray body. Now he did them to those folks' direction, but it's still that ability to shape metal and stuff, And some of those guys, they're all down here in Southern California. So that's cool that you're doing that. So you saving it in a digital form, stuff like that?
Yep. Figured it's a great preservation. We've got such a great mix too of really, I hate to say older school guys, but like the guys from historical figures. Yeah. We've got modern builders.
Watch which one you point at when you say that.
That's why I just kind of
that guy's not historical.
Yeah.
But no, and having a guest like you on, where you're oh my God. You have been beyond inspirational to me.
Well, that's nice of you to say that.
Yeah. I mean that sincerely. There was a particular issue of Hot Rod Magazine from 1989 that changed everything I wanted to do.
It's all Gray Baskerville's fault.
And he didn't pay attention. Anything he should have learned from you. See, that's...
Obviously, you've seen my crap.
My high school teacher said, you'll never make... I don't know how he said it. You'll never make any money drawing cars. I think those were exact words because they kind of stuck over the years. But, this whatever we do, whether it's parts or pieces of this process, it's a lot bigger than it ever was.
Oh, definitely.
And it's also more, you know, it's not just artifact based. You know, there's intellectual capital. People have, you know, brand names and stuff like that. So, you know, it's good stuff.
It's crazy. I mean, it has changed drastically, and I think we hit it the perfect time for what we wanted to do with this.
Yeah.
Where we have the ability to go back and kind of archive all the stuff. And I love when we get an email from someone who says, "Oh my God, I'd never heard of that guy before, but he's so influential in the industry." To me, that's great. If you learned something, well, if you learned anything from this podcast, awesome.
Right.
Hell, there's times we've walked out at the end of the episode and we've learned so much.
Yeah.
It's absolutely
between the
crazy.
fabricators and the people. In 07, we did an exhibit over here, like the 75th anniversary of the 32 Ford. And what was amazing is when you were trying to track down those cars, or you're trying to track 75 cars down, the number of people's paths who crossed over other paths. So like, was it Bud Burnett or Brian Burnett up in the Bay Area? And a couple other guys, they'd own like 5 or 6 of the cars, and somebody knew somebody who knew somebody.
Oh, man.
You know, it's
That must
all
have been
sort
awesome.
of woven together. And when you go over this year to the 90th over there, you know, those cars, I mean, they represent, you know, literally, well, 90 years of Model A, but at least 70 years of hot rodding. You know.
70 years of the show.
Yeah.
And that's, man, I mean, who would have
It's
thought?
amazing.
The very first one I got to attend was the 50th. And I'd grown up out east.
Oh, yeah?
So I'd moved to the Bay Area.
Yeah, I
and
was up at San Francisco at the Cow Palace.
Cal Pal.
Yeah.
that was crazy. I mean, I remember that going. I so badly wanted to go to one in the Coliseum. And then, that I had moved to the tent outside because they were in the process. And then the Cow Palace. The Cow Palace was a great show.
Yeah.
But it was so funny. I mean, and I never thought, like, at that show, I would have never imagined this. I never thought, oh, we'll have a
No, the
booth there and
scale
I'll be
of it.
recording
Yeah.
with 2 guys that I'll become friends with over the years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you were what, 72 that year?
Hey. Watch it, buddy.
The at that show was the first time I saw any of Jackie Howerton's work.
Oh, right on.
So Jackie and Steve Moll built the car that's over there for the AMBR contender, and he had his first car, which won here a couple of years ago, but it was in bare metal. It was like
Right. That's
semi-finished.
the one you know of.
Yeah.
And that was really when there were a lot of people talking about sort of this heritage aspect of, so like that 5-window 32 chips over there with those sort of cast appearing wheels, you know. That was a change in the aesthetic towards this sort of 50s Indy car parts and stuff like that, and the aesthetic, and sort of moving away from the pure billet to a little bit more of a manufactured, but an early speed equipment manufactured look.
Right.
And you still see, I mean, Pinky's car has that to it,
Yep.
you know,
Yep.
the one he did for Poteet.
Yep.
And there's other cars in the building. There's a little 36 over in the other building over there. And, you know, this is a pretty good line here, although, you know, doesn't necessarily have 50s cars in it. But even the transition from Chip's early stuff down to the later things and what they're doing, you know, it's a constantly moving thing.
Yeah.
And sometimes that reflects what society's sort of going through. So now you see Audis and Porsches with solid color paint, you know.
Right.
It'll have an old feel to it.
Yeah.
But you'll also see that in off-road vehicles, and Toyota's doing it on some of their products. And it gets back to this authenticity thing, you know. And so I think this place, even though, you know, there's a lot of 32 Fords, they're all done a different way, and, you know, reflect the time and the individual that built them, you know. So different things.
So what influences a guy like you? I mean, how did you obviously you basically reinvented the design language for an iconic brand.
Yeah.
Well, you know, it worked. You know, and it worked, and I worked for GM and for Ford, and, you know, for at least a decade about on each of them. But you're usually trying to solve a problem that is in a continuum. So they're building a Seville or a whatever it is, and you're going to make the next one, and you got to kind of work with it, with their brand, you know, vision and things like that. So like on 05 Mustang, you know, you had about 8 million Mustangs before the 05. Right? So you kind of work with it, and you interject some things that are more contemporary, and you try to get something that's cohesive, because you can also look around this place and see some incredible work, but it looks like it's like 2 or 3 cars, not just one car.
Right.
You know, there, and then you'll see some little 32 two-door sedan or something, and it just, I mean, just so hard and so clean.
Yeah.
You think the guy built it in one afternoon, you know, just because it's so focused.
Yeah.
You know, so
Sounds like most of my cars. It looked like
so-
they were built in one after.
so, but you know there's a standard comment about a sketch, you know, in a design studio, because you make thousands of sketches before you make a car. And, you know, some of the sketches just have a more together feel, and other ones look like they're labored over, and they, you know, they sort of took forever, and halfway through the person changed their mind and did another front end on a different car, you know. So that responsibility is a group of people working together, and then it's how well they get that thing right. So, like on the 05 Mustang, you know, Jay Mays was in charge of the design organization. And, you know, he had the sort of overall vision to know that we needed to connect with what a Mustang was. But he thought there were other Mustangs that were better examples of what a Mustang was. So we kind of focused at looking at those. And that came together pretty clean, and we executed fairly well. It was at a good, affordable price, which is what a Mustang needs to be. And it had a lot of appeal, you know. This is a country where you pull up in something and people look at it, you know. In New York, you pull up in a taxi and nobody pays any attention to it, you know?
True.
Yeah.
So those things come together, and they come together in a nice way, you know, with how that then affects hot rods. You know, hot rod's a broad spectrum. So if you get to the things that are around here, you can go anything from a new car to a, you know, 90-year-old car. You know, you got the whole range. So I think, you know, the guys that are really good at it, sometimes they can't explain it, but they'll, you know, people in your class, they'll just get some idea and they'll get it right. And they may not be able to articulate it, but that you look at that sketch and go, shit, you know, that's it.
Yeah.
And the really good working groups get a consistent way of doing that. You know, they just get a rhythm. It's like a band or something, you know.
Oh yeah, you get somebody in the group who has
Yeah.
a general idea.
Yeah.
They can't, you know, and I love being on that side of it where I get to be the one who sketches it out.
Yeah.
And I love that feeling when it's like, that's exactly what I had in my mind. You're going,
Yeah.
and there's other times you're like, really?
I just
That's
had to get
nothing
it out
like
of
what
there.
you had in your
I
mind.
can imagine what it's like to try to get that idea that you've been seeing in your mind, but just putting it to paper.
You're like playing a bartender, basically. I
Yeah,
mean, you
it's like
become one
that.
part
Yeah.
psychologist. It's like you're trying
Well,
to figure
yeah.
somebody out and going, you like this and this. It's like, how do I put apples and oranges? And,
Yeah, right.
And there's times when it doesn't come to you right off the bat. You can't just sit down at the table and go, this is what I'm going to do. You sit there and you draw things and you walk away. We've been over this talk too.
Many times.
Where there's days you can't turn that faucet on and it's like, here's the perfect idea. It's like weeks before you hit that perfect idea. And you got to play it off sometimes like, oh, I could do this in my sleep.
Yeah.
And nobody sees the patches of hair you tore out.
But, you know, and the shops work that way too. When we did Cadzilla, you know, Boyd's shop was just like, you know, they were completing each other's sentences. You know, they were really well
They had a
from
hell of a
front to
team.
back. They were, you know, and I thought, I mean, I'd never worked with a shop that capable. So, you know, I did the sketch. I'd sent it to Jack and Chisnall and Billy, you know, and they said, yeah, that's it. That's right, you know. And but then to take that into a shop and then have to go find a car and all that other stuff. And we would go out, I'd fly out of Detroit, get to LA Saturday afternoon, and then we'd work Saturday till late, go to some bar in some hole in the wall place that Billy'd found. And then we'd get up the next morning and go back down the shop, Craig and I mostly worked with Craig Neff because he was a metal shaper, right? And you know, you can draw all you want, but a drawing's a two-dimensional thing, and when you go to bend it over a three-dimensional surface, it sometimes works great, and sometimes it don't work great. But we did it about every 3 weeks for about 6 months,
Oh.
And yeah, there were times you showed up and thought, okay, we backed up, we went the wrong way. Then you'd shuffle some sheet metal around, but Craig was super about, like, he'd send photographs, and that was when the fax machines were first. This is Neanderthal days. No one had even invented the internet, that kind of shit.
Fax it over.
So I'd draw with that stuff and then send it back to him, but one of the problems around, especially with this stuff, with what we're doing, everybody says, well, it's Boyd's shop, Boyd's, no, it's everybody in Boyd's shop, and so you can send a drawing, but the shaper and the fabricator and everybody else, and I remember they had an interior guy, Danny Drum, out of Central California. I don't know if he's still there, but I'd done some drawings of the interior, didn't really like any of them or something, so I was standing there talking to Danny, and I said, what I want it to look like is this. And I just talked my way through it. And like a week later, he sent me a picture of a seat, and it was like dead on, And that interior came out so nice.
Yeah.
And there's no way that, we could have gone to a different interior person. They may have done a good job, but that was specifically the job Danny did, And the painters and everybody. Billy called me up one time. He goes, they're painting it. He goes, I got a bill for painting a transmission for X amount of dollars, and it wasn't little, Boyd had a big shop. And he goes, do we really need to paint the transmission? And I said, well, that's the way they go, and he wasn't being negative about it.
No,
he was just he'd not, been down into it that much. And he said, okay, he was cool with it. And, but yeah, that's the way, that whole shop, pillar to post, was like that,
That's awesome when you can connect with people like that.
Yeah, and that's the fun of building the cars, all these people know something, and sometimes it's, it's something very basic but critical, it's wiring harness or something like that, which nowadays is not basic, but anyway. Yeah, so that was, and you've seen that in, whether it's an art class or, whatever it is, it's that idea that you, it takes some observation. Sometimes a person that makes a difference is the one that goes, well, you forgot that, and you go, well, thank you.
Yeah.
I
always wondered about the evolution of that car. How did it all start out? Who decided I want to build a late 40s Cadillac?
Well, actually, my understanding, and I don't have all the story, I think Jack Chisnell's probably got as much, but Billy had a car under construction. And, a lot of times you just walk in and it doesn't feel like, and sometimes the car gets held up for reasons, those shops are usually managing multiple projects.
Right.
And so Jack had been doing some air conditioning work on Billy's other cars, because Jack's from San Antonio and Billy's from Houston. And Jack's like the standard bearer, and I think he helped him with the Eliminator.
Yeah.
And so I ran into Jack at the Nationals. I'd done some sketches for some guys, commercial booth, and Jack saw him. And I think Jack first talked to me because I was working in Cadillac Studios, and he thought, okay, I can get some money for this. I can get a car.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you a funny part about the part we did get. But Jack he had a lot of conversation with Billy, and I think Billy knew without a doubt, knew the feel he wanted. He wanted a Cadillac. Mm-hmm. And then there's also who Billy is. Sometimes when you build a car for a person to be quite brutal, they either don't project a personality or they want the thing going on. And that's not a path to anything great. When the person is a character, in a good way, that's great. So Billy had all this music, and he had like a vibe and a sound.
Oh, he's got his own thing. He's his own brand.
So Jack's, and I'd been communicating back and forth with Jack because Billy was either on tour or something like that. And so Jack and I met. We ended up talking about 40 Ford hood pieces, the trim piece, whether you leave it in or take it out. And back and forth, you hint, all this, you can get microscopic about some flange with some guy, and it's like their whole life. Jack's a little like that. And so Jack goes, he called me up, he goes, hey, Billy's thinking of doing this Cadillac. He goes, if you were going to do a Cadillac, which one would you do? And my dad had a 53 convertible. And I never liked the 53
No.
Convertible. It had like 2 sets of fenders on it.
Yeah.
It was a hood form, and
Yeah, and then
it
a
was
big-
just kind of bubbly.
Yeah,
and
everything's
it's kind of
stuck to it.
obese, and all this other stuff. And I said, well, I'd do that. I'd start with the best one, and the cleanest one was the Seednet. The one that first one with the tail fins, had the fast back. Then I thought, why not? And on a lot of that stuff, if you look at what are the original theme sketches, and that goes for every car ever done by a car company, you can see the distilled sort of essence of it. Mm-hmm. And so I had a good friend, passed away, a guy by the name Dave Holes, the design director at GM, and he had all this Bill Mitchell era stuff, and that's when they were drawing those cars, and they were
Awesome
all
era.
Let's put it this way: they were all chopped. They just wouldn't fit.
Chopped and low.
Humans with hats on them in them, so they changed them.
Yeah.
So I took so I just redrew the 50, the 49, 48, 49. Same car, different motor.
Yeah.
And then you do the things like pulling the roof down and making it slick and all the other stuff, and bigger wheels and tires and lowered. It's like
Tightening
it's like
the car
cosmetic surgery for an automobile.
Right.
And I sent him one sketch, and it was honestly one sketch, and Billy, you can lead a horse to water. No. Billy just said, yeah, that's what we're going to do. And he stayed the course, which is really hard because you get a lot of help along the way. Somebody goes, why don't you just, in fact, Billy has a saying for it. He goes, just give you a little help here, And he stayed the course. For a while, it had different drivetrains in it.
Okay.
So, and the usual thing is just go get a big block Chevy and at that time a 700R.
Yeah.
But we got to talking about it, and we got talking about what would this person be like that would have this thing, and he'd want the biggest thing you can get. And one of the biggest motors ever made is a 500-inch Cadillac,
Perfect.
And, so a lot of the pieces to it fell in place as we went along, and the character sort of, started to mature. It was a little more competition-minded in the beginning. Jack's a Bonneville fan, and he ran that Studebaker, and I like Bonneville. I did the posters for a few years and stuff, So it kind of matured, but really if it wasn't for the personality of Billy in the middle of that, it would not be what it is. Yeah. And it just looks so, singular. And Craig, the metalwork and the transition of the metalwork, because he cut up just about everything. The doors stayed a little close to stock, but everything else got cut in different ways. And also he was willing to move and change stuff. A lot of times you'll get into a situation and a person builds something. It's like, well, I'm not going back, And between the every 3 weeks and everything, Craig was just outstanding at saying, okay, what do we got to do?
Yeah.
And so it came together really tight, and it felt really cohesive.
God, the car's just got an iconic shape. I mean, when people talk about the most popular customs or best customs, Hero Hada Merc, Cadzilla, those two.
Yeah.
They are always on every list.
And that Hero Hada Merc, the way it kind of comes out,
beautiful.
Not that anything is specifically a tail dragger, whether it's Cadzilla or anything, but it's sort of like that cartoon, like almost feel to it. It's like jumping out.
Oh,
Feels
amazing.
I have a question about the car, and we talked about this here a while back. And since I have you here, it's like, this is actually cool.
What the
'cause
heck?
I can actually ask the guy that designed the car. Because you took a custom and you added a little bit of a hot rod flair to the thing. What inspired the moon gas tank?
Yeah, I was going to ask.
Seriously.
That sounds like a Billy touch.
I got more.
Ask as a fan, right?
I got
Yes,
more.
yeah.
I got more. Originally the more Bonneville inspired the moon tank, but once we put a 55 Chevy front bumper on it, okay, and it almost fit exactly. I don't even know if they had to trim the length. But we wanted to do the Dagmars, and actually built the Dagmars by slicing up a bunch of pieces and everything. And then it was like everything was getting a little too cute and a little too perfect, And hot rodding is about hot rods, customs, and then there's this sort of, irreverence in the middle that's Von Dutch, it's Ed Roth, it's all this other stuff.
Poking fun at both
sides.
sides.
And Dave, so I did that. I did the drawings for that in the Cadillac studio, behind these walls that, if you knew your way around the studio, and I was working in there at the time, you could put it on the back of a working surface. There were these movable boards. So I had it down one night working on it, and the director of design, which was Dave Holes, who had done the 59 Cadillac, the giant fins. That was Dave's car.
One of my
Iconic
favorite cars.
Dave,
Yeah, absolutely.
And Dave is every bit of that car, was every bit of that car. He's big and wild. He had a 49 Ford as a kid. He's just like, he was intense, And Dave walks in and he goes, "What's that?" And I'm thinking, oh, fuck, I'm screwed now.
Oh.
I'm in trouble now. You got to bleep that part out. I'm in trouble now.
Career ender.
And I'm in trouble now. And he goes, "What are you doing?" And I said, "A buddy of mine wants to cut up a Cadillac in California." And he goes, "Oh, that's great," because I had it almost all taped out and laid out. And you tape them full size. And so I was wrestling with having to put flat glass in it. And then Dave started talking about the back, but he gave me a lot of stick about that tank. He goes, "God, it looks so crude." He says, "Everything else looks so beautifully done and all that other stuff." And then they did a beer commercial with it. I don't know which one was Bud or something back in the day, or might not even been beer, but it was on television basically. And he said, "I saw it on television." He goes, "Now I understand the tank." And to this day, I never know what he meant.
It's a keg. It's a little pony keg. It's a little pony keg in the front of the car.
It's just a moon tank, and moon tanks are like, they're the holy grail.
Well, it's funny because when we had talked about that, I decided I was like, I got to go online. So I'm looking at a bunch of old Craig pictures when he was building the car. So looking at all the stuff at Boyd's, and I'm blowing up the picture on the wall. You had the full-size drawing of it.
Yeah.
And I'm blowing it up to see if that was added on. It's like, is this something cut out? They threw on there to see if it was going to work. Going, I don't get the moon. It's cool because you brought in like a little bit of hot rod into the custom world. It was very unique. I got to give you that much because it was
if you had it to do over again and you did a different group of people, same group of people, and just slightly change a dialogue, it might not have happened that same way.
Right.
But sometimes the best things about something are the things that sort of don't fit or are different. I think this idea that you perfect something, you can also take the personality out of it too.
Yep.
Well, if you took that off, it wouldn't be the same car anymore.
Try to imagine that car without
it wouldn't work. That's what made the car the car. It was its own little deal.
Robert De Niro minus the mole.
And the better.
Yeah, I figured that one out. Right?
What was interesting is that 500 inch. So they'd been out of production, and so Harry Hibbler said, "Well, I got a guy at Cadillac. He knows the Cadillac engineering guys." And I'd asked and got no answer. And Harry called him, and they said, "We'll find you one." So I get this call to go down to what the hell is it? Go down to Cadillac engineering plant and look at this motor. And I go down there, and there's this piece of junk laying on a crate, and they got it banded up and everything. And I looked at it, and I thought, well, if that's what you're gonna send, I think they air freighted it to California. Art Christman told me years later. Art Christman said, "You could have walked to any junkyard in Southern California and bought a better motor for $500." He said every piston was gone, the crank was shot, most of the rods were worthless. He goes, "I saved the block," but Belly gave me a little bit of stick about that. But I said, it had been the mule motor for the presidential limousine in 1976 or something like that.
Really?
So it was like
that's
it
cool history.
It's close to as Provenance's hot rod.
That's cool history right there.
But so it's a real 500, and it'll go. I drove it from here down to Boyd's shop one year on a freeway, and it'll go.
I did ride and drive.
You can't see the road for about a quarter mile in front of you, but you look cool.
Oh, so that's a car guy right there. Can you see anything? No, but I look good.
We were in front of Autorama the year they brought that into bikes, and we're out there taking the usual BS press shots, just standing out front, freezing cold. This guy pulls up in a Falcon, like a '64 four-door, and a '64 Falcon in Detroit in 2000 or whatever, 96 or whatever that was. Like, you never saw an old car in winter. This guy pulls up in this Falcon, and I said, you're out in this weather? He goes, it's the only car I got. And so we started talking. He was a young guy. We started talking, and the truck driver that was hauling the Cadillac said, can you take it around the other side of the building? And I said, yeah, I know my way around the building. Go take it on the dock. And he's standing there looking at it, and I said, hey, you want to go for a ride? And he goes, yeah. So he gets in the passenger seat. And now this is lunchtime in 30-degree weather in the middle of winter in Detroit. So we pull out on the street, and as the road rises up, there's a commercial building with some restaurants in it and a staircase. And down the staircase come these two girls. So I roll down the passenger window, and they walk down, and they kind of look at this thing like, and I said, hey, you guys want to go for a ride? And the one looks at us and goes, no. Like, are you crazy?
You'll regret this.
That car's got kind of a life of its own.
Oh man!
I saw it about a year ago. It was done at Mix, getting touched up. Some of the paintwork was getting redone at Mick Jenkins.
Yeah, they took it to Goodwood.
And I was doing something, and I was doing some pinstriping down there, and I walked in the door. I might have been when I was working on Bob Florine's wagon. I might have been working
I think it was right
when
around
there.
that time, yeah.
And I walk in and I was like, hey, it's Cadzilla.
Yeah.
And if you go back a bunch of years, back to the 90s when Boyd did that car, they made 2 sets of those wheels.
Yeah.
And I was doing work with Bob Bowder. I don't know if you knew
that?
Bob Bowder. Did you know
Yeah,
Bob?
Bowder. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I was doing some work for Bob, and he goes, dude, I know where the other set of those wheels are, and you can go get those wheels for, it was like nothing. But I was like, I had nothing I could really put them on that would work, and I kind of regret to this day because I could have got the other set of wheels for nothing, for all 4 of them. They're just sitting on a shelf.
Yeah, we ran a bead over the sidewall, which, nowadays you could get the right size tire. Back then, there was like no tires, not the kind of choices you have now. But yeah, all kinds of funky things have happened with that thing. It's been a good, and it's a great group of people around them. Bowder and even Mick, who painted it on a return, and even the guys that hauled it. Everybody was really cool.
Yeah.
So it was good. It was a lucky experience. I don't think you could have set up that kind of situation because it's difficult. These cars are expensive, take a lot of time, and you get a lot of stress out of them sometimes.
Oh yeah. But that car got driven. That's what's cool about that car.
Oh yeah, they drove across country and a few other places. I've driven it in a few places, but it's just good it got done. It's good Billy's, because it's not just, and this goes to the ownership thing. It's not just a car that gets built. It's what happens to it once it's built. So.
Well, right after that car, you kind of built your own personal project, which really influenced a lot of us too. You did the 28 Chevrolet?
Well, it was a 32, but we cut it up so much it could have been anything by the time we got done with it.
Yeah, that one was a really, really cool car. And whatever happened to that car?
Well, Wes has it. You're just walking by.
Oh, really?
So, yeah, I'm a 5-figure guy, and that's a 6-figure car. So Wes is a 7-figure guy.
But that was such a cool car because nobody at the time, everybody was building Fords, and you built a Chevrolet, and it's like, wow, this thing is cool looking.
Yeah,
and it had such a unique look to it. It was a look all of its own.
Yeah, it had us when I was doing, I did a few Bonneville posters, and Dean Moon called me one time, and like Moon's like the Holy Grail, Moon's like serious stuff. Fred Larson worked there.
Yeah.
It's like, and so he calls me up and he goes, I want to could I get the original artwork for some of these posters? And I said, yeah, I'll and he says, what about doing some pictures and stuff? And I said, I'd really like a pot vin blower. Because I always loved the way that thing just kind of hung out there. Yeah. And so I started, and I was drawing people's cars and stuff like this. And I like this idea of sort of I'll work on your car, you work on my car.
That's fair.
It's a lot more fun.
Yeah.
If you can afford to do that, And Boyd and I pretty much always worked that way. We never exchanged. It was never employee employer
equity.
And and so Boyd built the chassis pieces up, and Larry Sergejeff, who was another guy that was in their shop.
Yep.
The Swedish contention. You know?
Yeah, they had a
Swedish
bunch of
Mafia.
Swedes down there.
Yeah.
Swedish Mafia.
and him and Lars and so they built up the chassis. And it's like a connection of who's who. Dan Webb, who's over in
Dan Webb. We saw him
Dan helped
Thursday.
me set up the first sort of mount the body, get it into structure, stuff like that, and then John West, who's used to have Dan Fink's place down in Huntington Beach, he finished it off out here. In fact, we took it to the Grand National when it was in San Mateo.
Right on.
Yeah, and
Just talking about that show.
No. when I called one of these detailers, because somebody goes, "Oh, you got to get a detail before you take it up there," and real nice guy, well known, and I said, "What's it going to take to get that thing there?" And just clean it up because the paint was really nice and everything. He goes, "Oh, probably about 15." And I said, "1,500?" He goes, "No, 15,000." And I went, "Okay, we're not going to do that." So, but it was doing it was a lot of fun. It ended up on Hot Rod.
Oh, it's a great looking car.
It was all those. Everybody's so fixated sometimes on the next thing that they forget the value of the sort of continuum of what you had behind you.
Yeah.
And I just like those old track nose cars.
Such a good looking car.
And to me, a hot rodder is always about work with what you have.
Yeah.
And I had that Chevy body, which was metal, and we clay modeled the front end of that thing in our garage. A guy named Steve Worrell, and Craig rolled the panels. So it was cool.
What was cool, Hot Rod Magazine at that time, every month there would always be like a little bit of, here's what Larry's working on. There'd be some cool little shots.
Yeah,
and it would make you
Gray,
just die for the next issue that would come out. To
Gray
see
was
what
my
else
thing.
Yeah, he was so good about that.
Yeah, Gray was big into finding people and then just kind of staying with them in a good way.
Yeah, it was so much fun.
And
You would
Scott
look forward to the
and,
next issue.
Yeah.
What's going on with this particular car that I was just in love with in the last issue? It was great.
And that's how I met Bowder. In fact, we did the motorcycles, the two.
I painted the license plates to make look like
you
license
did?
plates on those motorcycles.
All right.
And that's one of my prouder moments. Bob
Yeah.
calls him and he goes, "Hey, I need you to do these license plates for because I live up on the high
Hogzillas.
desert. He was up in the mountains, so we're like 25 minutes apart. And I did a bunch of stuff with Bob over the years. And he goes, I'm going to bring in the aluminum, just make it look like license plates.
Yeah.
And it's got to say Hog 1 or Hog 2 or whatever it was.
Yeah.
It was something like that.
Yeah.
And he goes, it's got to have stickers on it. I went, but what's the color for stickers next year?
Yeah.
Nobody
How do
knew
you
what
know?
they were. So there's Brad. I start going through license plates and I'm looking at colors and it's like this and this and this and this. Like,
because there's a rhythm.
this should be the color for this year.
Yeah.
I'm winging this because they're not out yet. So I paint it all up. I think it's going to be blue. So I paint blue stickers on this thing. The stickers come out, they're blue. And it's like, yes, I actually got it right.
Well, Bob was a pretty tough guy.
Yeah,
And the first time I went up there was with Jack and a buddy of mine. I think Tammy was along. And I was going to mock up the body because we had a set of drawings. And I'd actually sent a full-size drawing down to the studio when Billy they were in Memphis or something. And then it went cold. And then I actually got a Arlen Ness frame and started a bike, the same design, only on a stretch 9-inch over. What's his name? Jesse James has it now. He got it from Boyd. But then when they came together with Harley and had the bikes, then it was like, okay, gotta get this done. So here I show up at Bowder's. Never met him before. I know Pete,
Right.
but Pete was easy. Everybody liked Pete.
Yeah.
And I walk in and Bowder's got the posse there. He's got Steve Davis and a bunch of other guys. They're all standing around doing that Southern California thing.
And you walk in with great.
Intimidating.
Sitting in his barber chair.
In a barber chair, yep.
Yeah, you could have brought the cure for penicillin, and they still would have been looking at you like, the penicillin cure, I should say. Anyway, but so I walked in there, and I've got these big sheets of paper, foam cores like with foam cores,
right.
sandwich paper, and so I was going to mock it up on a bare bike, and I'd given Pete the instructions, take the body pieces off it, drop it down, get it at the right attitude, and I got there, and these guys are like, well, what's he going to do? Because, they're the guys that they built stuff without any kind of a
Right.
drawing, and over the next 6 hours, I cut and like I'm hustling. Because I thought if this comes out looking ugly, these guys are never going to listen to me ever again. And it actually came out really good.
No, it's that Larry guy. Yeah.
Yeah, he can draw, but he can't do anything other than that. Go make some coffee, kid. Yeah. So, anyway.
That's awesome. I just also want to say thank you for saving Cadillac.
Oh, saving Cadillac. Well, there's been a lot of people saving Cadillacs.
Well,
so,
you know, you kind of were the guy
I quit saving them in 94, I
but
think. And
that
a
was
bunch of
that
other guys
transitional
came on.
period when they went
Yeah.
from
What? Well, we were really,
Yeah.
I think we did two good cars. This 92 Seville and the
Yeah.
Eldorado.
Yeah, great looking
Came
cars.
out. It kind of,
It changed the
again.
direction of where
Kept
that
them
brand was going.
Yeah, and those car companies do that on a regular, hopefully
yeah.
regular schedule. But yeah, there's you just hope you add something.
And there was a period right around that time, maybe it was like towards the early 2000s, when Cadillac was just putting out some beautiful concept cars.
They
man.
had a great run in there, and it was sort of that real mechanical,
Yeah,
real
they
heavy,
awesome looking.
Lots of and the name will come to me right
Nice
after I
crisp
get out
edges.
that door.
Nice crisp. Everything was just crisp.
Yeah, and a lot of those guys, some of those guys are still there. And Simon Cox. Simon Cox was one guy out of Europe, and then here was he's down at Hyundai now. Tom, it'll come to me, but they had a big group of people, and they really hit another stride.
Yeah.
And then lately, especially like with the Escalade and some of that stuff, they've been going strong. So it goes in waves.
Yeah. Yeah, they got a great they had a great design. I really like what they did. I remember when
Tom Kearns, that's it. So Tom was in there too.
I think there was I can't remember what, I think it was maybe Motor Trend. They had a picture on the front cover, the new shape of Cadillac, and I think it was a really, I think it was their Eldorado body style, and it had a picture of the front, but it looked like maybe an artist concept of it, but it was like, wow. I mean, even as a young guy that would never afford a Cadillac, I was a kid in the Air Force at the time. It's like, I want one of those.
Yeah.
It's
an
trim back
emotional process.
Yeah, exactly,
and that will never change.
Yeah, and I think that's what's so great about it. I'll bet you there are so many concepts and designs and drawings that if it ever came out to public, people would just freak out because there's so much great work that was never seen.
Yeah, a lot of the things that go into sort of moderating what you can do is important things like reliability and durability.
Yeah, those are pretty key elements.
Your phone
kind of stuck with those.
Your $600 phone can die after 3 years, and you go, oh well, it's only a $600 phone, but if your car dies, it's not a good thing.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not a good thing.
Yeah, that's
Great way to put it. It's not.
Do you ever think we'd say $600 phone?
No.
I mean, I gotta be honest.
And
with
that's
you.
not even-
Imagine life without.
And that's not even an expensive one.
No, that's all. You get the one that gets like 2 apps.
Phone.
yeah.
None of them anyone's ever heard of.
You have to pay for your usage.
Yeah. No, so yeah, along the wacky things that happen with cars, Billy was always into bringing artists down and other creative people. He'd bring them in on the weekends so one time he brought I think he was a plastics artist or something like that, and the guy agreed to do the taillights, which were these molded things,
big
tall ones.
Yeah.
And we got down the deadline, and he hadn't finished them, and Boyd was being Boyd on the phone, and so the guy freaked out, and he buries one in the backyard of his house, or somebody else's house, I don't know what, and he sends Billy a ransom note, basically, and I'm sure it wasn't worded like that, but it basically said, unless somebody comes up with the money, you ain't seeing the other one.
Awesome.
So he sends it to me. He sends it to me, and he goes, "What do you think we ought to do?" And I said, surely somebody in this town can. Man, the guy wanted $10,000, which in 1989 money was a fair amount, And so I said, surely, somebody can do it for less. So I took the one he sent me. I took it to a very good friend who worked at a prototype shop, and I got a quote back a day and a half later of $9,600.
Yeah, came in under budget.
And I called Boyd up, and he goes, shit, nobody's going to see the difference between that and something else. He goes, come up with another idea, and he hung up the phone. So I went and bought this stuff we used in the concept cars, which was like plastic sheets, but it's got. So we stuck them on for just the photographs, and I thought later on we'll get the rest of the taillight. And they're still on the car today.
Wow.
And that
Dang it, I was there. I would have looked at the taillights.
And that other taillight is still in that guy's backyard.
Imagine the house gets sold 3 or 4 times.
He was probably convinced he was going to get his 10 grand too.
Yeah. Dog comes running through the house with it. That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Imagine somebody digging up, doing some landscaping work, and like, what the hell? Don't have that trash.
And I think Baskerville's favorite part was the fact that they cut up such a nice seed net to start with. I mean, that thing, it drove in and purred when it came in.
Wow, it was a driver. I didn't know
it was like
that.
a really nice car, like 20,000 mile car or something.
Oh, wow.
So
wow. But see, that's cool. We're going to do it right.
Yeah, you're going to go large.
It's not a rust bug.
As long as there's one stock one in the world, that's enough.
That's it, man.
I always just wondered, like, an alternate dimension where, like, what if Billy Gibbons had gone on and played, like, the theremin or something like that, Would it have been the same car?
No, I think, when you build up a persona like that, and, shoot, a lot of people around here have it too, Yeah. They just carry it on. I just love these guys walking around, and gals too. They got this look. And, they've got it down to the thread count, man. They just are working it. And that's who they are, and it may be only on this day, and the rest of the year is different. But, I think it's great. I think, you get here and the music and the paint that's still drying.
You still smell it gassing off.
Yeah, it's a magical place, man.
Yeah.
I just wondered about that. I mean, at 46 years old, I've yet to figure out what the hell my style is. I've never figured that out. But you get these guys, they had to have gone to a stylist or something. You go, how do you get that perfect look for your personality and everything? I'm going, man, I chose like bland guy number 7. I was like, that works for me.
No options.
Bland dad number 7.
Bland dad. Yeah.
Dad.
Bland dad. That's one word. Bland dad.
Done.
Extra frumpy.
I didn't have the money for extra. I just wanted
Give me some of that extra frumpy.
You can barely afford the frumpy you got.
Oh, damn it. This is gonna run me.
Oh, my God. The frumpy women will be coming.
Oh, yeah. They'll be lining up.
Right.
Hold on to your macrame, ladies.
That's the 3rd time this weekend.
Holy crap.
mentioned
Macrame has been brought up.
We mentioned macrame. We're like, everybody had the macrame plant hanger.
See, Larry, you got to hang out more often. We're talking macrame
With
stuff now,
some
man.
crazy looking plant that had that one vine that hung
Yeah.
way down.
When did it die? Well, I think it's alive.
The one is still going.
That's a get style from like the phone
The
cord.
rest of it looks like a compost ball, but it's got one live one that's coming off of it.
Oh my God, we're gonna go back and rewatch the video. As soon as we said macrame, Larry's like,
Macrame?
you speak my language.
Somebody else is into it? Huh?
I saw a bumper sticker in Portland. It's like the Weavers Club. It said, if weaving was a sport, you could bounce a quarter off my ass. I thought it is just such a weird twist of logic, You're like, oh, that's cool. Yeah. It's that intensity to be who you are.
That's awesome.
Right.
Oh my God.
So you go by honking and giving a thumbs up, going, your bumper
Let your
sticker just
freak
made
lie
my
when I
day.
lie.
When I see you again in like 17 years, I'll go, remember the macrame dude?
Macrame guy.
Frumpy macrame guy.
Right. Blandad.
They're gonna change my name legally now to Frump Macrame. Would be awesome.
Start making macrame vests that people can wear. May not be the most comfortable thing on a hot day.
Yeah,
man, does it look good?
With a really long string on one side, just kind of hanging out.
Looking washer-looking medallion things that always went between them. You know,
Well,
that's how they
this would be
connected the
great for like, all the
levels.
Bonneville guys. Maybe if your car doesn't make the 200-mile-per-hour clip, we need to have like a 78-mile-an-hour clip. If so many cars
78
blows up at
mile.
like the 3-mile mark, they can wear a macrame vest. We can have one of those medallions.
Get the red hat or the macrame vest. Which is it going to be?
the earth tone hat.
With the brown hat. Okay.
Oh, because you blew up earlier, you're gonna have to wear black for the rest of the weekend. Sorry, bud.
Yeah.
Might be a little hot on you.
Grieving for your short block.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks,
It's a lot of fun.
Thanks, sir.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, thanks, man. I know that
I
you're
really put all this stuff.
Oh, thanks, man. Yeah, you've been very, very accommodating. You know, knowing you're a busy guy, you were very patient with us this
we need to
weekend.
get a
Thank
picture.
you
Just
so
gonna go
much.
look at more cars.
Hey,
Yeah.
don't go. We got to get a picture,
gotta
and
get
you
one-
got to sign the
Yeah,
table.
you have to sign.
Please sign the table.
Where would you like to sign? Your color. We have silver. We have black. We have black and silver. Anywhere.